Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who reads human design charts. She is very knowledgeable and understanding of the ins and outs of what this all means and how we can all use this information to be living our own design. Everybody, welcome Kara Gilsenan to the show.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Kara, how are you?
I'm great, Todd. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. And just so the audience is aware, Mimi is here as well. Mimi, you could say hello.
Hey, everybody.
We are here with you. I'm very excited about this. Human design is something that is only probably about 2 months or so old to me. So I'm very new to it, but I have adopted the way that it affects me immediately. As soon as I found out that I was a reflector, I was like, boom, that explains so much. And I was just, I'm feeling the energy. And I'm so glad I could have you on. You know human design and you have been doing readings now for a little while.
Yes, probably about over a year, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into human design?
Let's see. I found out about it from someone that I went to school with who was talking about it on Facebook, and it sounded really interesting. And so I got a reading. And it's funny, like in her little post she said on Facebook, she's like, "Oh, my reading changed my life." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And it totally changed my life. I just understood things that had been so confusing to me before, didn't make sense, or things that I judged about myself before, that it was just all of a sudden like so much clearer. Oh, that's why that happened that way, or that's why I feel this way. And that's what I really love about human design, is that we're all conditioned in these certain ways to be certain ways, and we're programmed to kind of be, look a certain way or act a certain way in society to be successful, or to be this or to be that. And for most of our lives we might judge ourselves in a lot of ways because we don't fit the norm, or we don't fit what other people think we should be doing. And I feel like for a lot of people, human design is like this big breath of fresh air of like, oh, that's why I do things this way, and it's totally fine that I do them this way. I'm supposed to do them this way. So that's, my first initial introduction to it certainly did that for me.
Yeah, well, I feel that because it did it. I didn't even get a reading, I just got my chart. Oh, and you wanted to let our audience know where they can go get their charts?
Oh yeah. So if anybody wants to look up their chart, because it's very helpful to be able to see, especially as I'm talking through the different points, what yours is. But if you don't have it with you right now, you can always go get it and come back again later. You can either go to jovianarchive.com. So that's JOV. Make sure I spell this right. JOVIAN archive.com. And there's also geneticmatrix.com. There's probably other websites if you just look up free human design chart, but those are the two that I use the most.
Okay, and so what is human design? Why don't you explain that to our audience?
Okay, so the way I describe human design is that it's the design of who you were designed to be. So like I was saying about the whole conditioning thing, it's not about, what we think is good or bad or right or wrong. It's who you were designed to be in this life. And it has like astrology, I feel like, because I study astrology too, and that talks a lot more about, I feel like, themes and concepts and archetypes. And human design is a little bit more about your energy, your aura, how you're meant to kind of move in the world, how your energy interacts with other people. And so the effect that you have on other people, or how the effect other people might have on you. And it's not a done deal. It's just that once you understand that, then you can actually move with it and use it to your benefit and understand it. And so, like when you look at the definitions, the energy centers, we all have a combination, or you're a reflector, so you only have the undefined energy centers, but many of us have the combinations of having them undefined or defined. And that will tell us what areas we absorb energies from other people from, and what areas we kind of push our energy out. And so when we know that and we're in a relationship, I just think it's incredibly powerful and helpful to know that. The first thing I did when I learned my human design chart was I found out the charts of all my kids so that I could figure out how to interact with them. So it's this beautiful just explanation of how we're meant to interact with the world.
So
And it
that's
has,
what,
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. I was going to ask, so you're saying the defined ones. So to my understanding is undefined is white and then defined will have some kind of color. Is that what I'm picking up?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and each defined center is going to be the same. They're different colors on the chart, but each person's, for example, head center, if it's defined, will be the same color. So sometimes people ask me what the colors mean. They don't really mean anything, just if it's colored in or if it's white.
Okay.
That's what you want to look at.
Okay, that's perfect because I was just going to ask that if the colors meant anything. So I also checked out my daughter. So my girlfriend and I, we both got ours. She's a generator. I'm a reflector, and then I got my daughter is a manifesting generator. And as
Beautiful.
I explained that to her, and it must have clicked in her a little bit because she's been more careful with her words and watching her actions. She's realizing that she was manifesting what the environment of the room is because
Yeah.
I explained to her, I'm reflecting what people give me. And I do hold a responsibility in making sure that I'm reflecting the best aspects of what I'm getting, but I also am not always on point. So when she is acting a certain way, then I'm going to enhance that way. So if she's starting something with me, then I'm going to be 10 times worse. And then
Mhm.
if, it's a cycle, if she doesn't break the cycle, well, I mean, just
I know what you mean.
in a general sense, right? I'm not trying to skate responsibility here, but
Mhm.
but
But that's
yeah,
just that's your natural inclination, and you can
right,
be
right.
mindful of it for sure, especially with a child and understanding that. But it's also, and that's the gift in the reflector, is that it's kind of like the whole idea about how our reality reflects back to us, our own energetic frequency. It's just kind of that. It's like if you and that's one of the really special things about reflectors is that and most of them don't know the reflectors. They don't even know they're doing it, but they reflect back to us. How am I doing? How is this working? What's going on? And so if we see it as the gift that it is and take that wisdom, it can be incredibly powerful. But I'm sure there's an extra dynamic between father daughter where that might play out. But
Oh yeah,
just
and
that.
she's a Gemini as well, so
Oh, great.
she's definitely like one is a manifester and the other one's the generator. That is exactly her.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it was
That's
funny. It was funny in the beginning. You were saying astrology. I feel like astrology is very loosely themed, but I feel like I know that astrology was here first, but I feel like astrology is just like a copy of human design without the chakra centers. It's like someone took human design and broke it down and put, Eastern side got the chakra center, and then the Western side got astrology, and now human design's bringing them back together because that's how they're
yeah.
supposed to be.
Yeah. I can see that for sure.
Yeah, so I enjoy the nine because I feel nine chakra centers. Uh, although the heart, it is strange because I have my heart center. I feel my heart center, but I don't feel it where it has the heart on there. I feel nine, but it's in a different spot than that one.
Yeah, the heart is actually, it's also called the will center, and that is confusing. The identity center, that diamond in the middle where we would typically connect with, or where I connect with my heart, that's the center that's all about love. But
Right.
they do call the heart center, that little triangle, the will center, which is really more about ego and self-esteem, even like business, kind of a business sense. So
Okay. That
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, because I definitely feel the heart center
Mhm.
strike up. Um, So, do you want to go over the different types of not reflectors, the different types of human designs?
Sure. Yeah, so there's the 5 types, and you already named 3. There's the I'll do it in this order because I like to kind of like paint the picture of like give it kind of a conceptualization here. So the manifestors, which you mentioned, manifesting generators. So the manifesting generators have a little bit of this in them as well. But the manifestors are really the ones that are here to create, initiate energy. They actually have kind of a repelling aura, but that allows them to get their ideas out without too much obstruction. And
Mm.
so again, they're the ones that are here to create, here to manifest. They don't always have a consistent stream of energy though, like the generators and the manifesting generators. So they can start a lot of stuff, but they might not be able to finish it. But that's where the manifesting generators and the generators will come in to finish the projects. But before they come in, we have the projectors, and they are the ones that are really good at, they have a very focused and absorbing aura. So whereas you as a reflector have kind of like a sampling aura. So you sample everybody's energy, you get a feel for it and reflect it back. A projector will actually just kind of absorb the energy a little bit deeper. And they are very, over time, once they recognize this is, what they do and how they can benefit people around them, they use that to gain wisdom about who's good at what and how to kind of manage people and how to direct people so that the project kind of gets this, like, if the manifestor wants to initiate a project and the projector comes in and says, okay, well, you're going to be good at this and you're really good at this, and they kind of manage it. And then the generators and the manifesting generators are generally the ones that carry out, they have that sustained energy, but the manifesting generators are a little bit better at, well, they can initiate energy and they can carry it out. And they're the ones that, I don't know if you notice, typically, parents will make their kids, if they start something, they want to make them finish it. They want to teach them that whatever characteristic. But that's actually, it's a characteristic of manifesting generators to start lots of things and not finish them, because they're just sampling ideas. And then when something hits and clicks and gets their generator motor going, then they kind of take off with it. And then the reflectors are the ones that kind of step back, and they, again, whether they realize, most people don't know they're reflectors, but they just do this naturally, where they kind of reflect the energy of the room. They reflect the energy of the project or whatever was initiated. And so if we kind of took everybody into this little community, it's like, we have the manifestors initiating, the projectors kind of organizing and managing, the manifesting generators and generators carrying out all the work, the labor, and the reflectors reflecting back, how well is everything working? How cohesive are we? How are we doing? So that just gives you kind of a general idea of like how everybody works together. But if you have any specific questions about the types themselves, I can go in deeper into each of one of the types too.
Well, so if we were going for a 5-man team or woman, whatever, 5-person team, would it be most beneficial to have one of each?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess, I pause because I think about how, the percentages, like there's such a higher percentage of generators. There's only 1% of the population is reflectors. So I guess if I like kind of tune into that intuitively, maybe it's like you could have like a community of people and have just a couple of the people that come up with the great ideas, having more of the people that carry out the work, although that is shifting. I don't know if you've heard about how the human design chart is supposedly going to be changing in 2027. And also there'll be, like right now there's 70% generators, and there's going to be eventually way more projectors, because we're moving into more of a energetic society. So the work isn't necessarily going to have to be hands-on, I guess, in that kind of sense, if that makes sense.
I
but just
have not
generally,
heard that.
yeah. And so maybe you only need one reflector that can just kind of reflect it all back,
Okay.
if you break down, because like I said, I think there's like 70% of the population is either a generator or manifesting generator, 1% is reflector, 21% is projector. I think only 10% is manifestor. So
Okay.
I would think there's a reason for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is as well, and it makes sense in the way you're explaining it. If you're going to have a community, you will want the people who are going to generate the energy. Oh. The generators are carrying out the energy, so it would make sense to have more of them so that they can carry out the ideas. And but my question as a reflector is, I can take on the life of any of the other 4. So when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, I'm all of them. And she was like, you can't be all of them. She's like, because if you're a reflector, then you can't be the other ones because reflectors are completely open. And I was like, oh, well, that's me. I'm a mirror to everybody. And she's like, oh, it's only 1%. I was like, all right, let me go look it up. So I looked it up, and then I really got into it. But I realized that, well, not really got into it, but I got into it enough that I started realizing that I'm taking on the life of everything else around me. And it made my life make so much more sense and why I was doing the things I was doing when I was around the people I was around. And it just made so much sense to me. But I can see that sometimes I'm a generator and I'm just working my ass off. And sometimes I can see I'm a projector, that I am projecting thoughts of or feelings that I have towards someone else, and creating a story in my mind which isn't true. I'm projecting it to be true. So then it becomes true to me, but it's not an actual true thing. So I'm not living in truth when I do that. The thing that I had most trouble with was manifesting. See, for a little
Mhm.
while, I didn't think that it was real for me in the way that it's real for everybody else. But then I manifested th- three different things in 3 days in a row, like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, it was just I was telling myself I couldn't do it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Well,
Yeah.
that, and think about, you have all of your energy centers open. So you're taking on your whole life, from since you were born, taking on everybody else's belief systems. So when you think about manifestation, we really have to have our pure intention and belief behind what we're trying to manifest. So there might have been some, healing or sifting or rechanging, reprogramming of belief systems that had to happen before you could really believe in what you were trying to manifest.
Yeah, it changed for me when I spoke to Brandon Beecham, who actually his episode came out today, but ever since I spoke to him, and the episode's called Unlock Abundance, and I felt like
Mhm.
something unlocked in me that I needed to speak to somebody who could manifest whatever they wanted, and then I could take on the life of that. So yeah, I feel like with my podcast is I take on a little bit of each of my guests and I incorporate their personality somewhat into myself then at that point.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I actually have a little bit of that because I have all of my energy centers are actually defined except for my identity center. So I do feel that strongly where I will take on other people's identities when I'm around them. And I didn't real that was one of the things that I learned. And I didn't know that obviously for the longest time. And I have had so many experiences with friendships where they would accuse me of wanting to be like them or trying to be like them, and I was just I couldn't, I had no idea what they were talking about. And then after I learned that, I was like, wow, I must have, like, they noticed it, I didn't notice it because I didn't realize I was doing it, but there really was some truth to that. So it and that's it's the fascinating part because there's so many different aspects of each design and how they all play out. um, but knowing that about yourself, I bet really helps you to gain more from every interaction that you have.
Yeah, and one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was from my father, and it was in terms of baseball, but I just use that as a symbolic thing for everything else in life. Is that he told me, he was a really good coach, and we went undefeated several years in a row. We won championships. Like, I was a really good player. My dad was a really good coach, and he told me one day, he's like, you gotta study your opponent, and you take the best parts of them, and then you incorporate it in yourself. And I've been doing that with so many things, and I didn't realize just how much more it affects me as a reflector because I'm so undefined, and I realized I was giving myself away to everything else. Like, I absorb, if like Eminem had a new album, I would do nothing but listen to that until I absorbed it for like a month. I take on these things and I get addicted to them. I obsess over them, and I become extreme with them on everything. And as soon as I get enough of it, then I'm done with it forever because I took from what I needed, and then it's like, okay, no more.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And that piece of advice, when you were sharing that about your dad, it just kind of hit me that it was the perfect piece of advice for you, but if he had given that to a different type or design, it might not have worked because they could spend their whole life trying to incorporate things from other people that they couldn't incorporate. But for you, because you have all of the open energies, you could actually do that.
I wonder if my dad's a reflector as well, if like that's something that he was doing.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Really
We're having
interesting.
some crazy thunder here right now.
Are you?
Yeah, it was freezing up a little bit, but so I want to get back to the chart a little bit. So the cross, I think it's the left cross of separation. Uh,
Yeah.
Now that is something I heard is a karma clearing thing, that I'll clear karma for others in some sense.
That might be true. I don't have all of the incarnation crosses memorized. I
Okay.
have a book that I would have to go and look at it, but I do know that with the left angle aspect, that whatever your, that purpose is, it's probably going to have to do with other people, because left angle crosses are transpersonal, and the right angle crosses are more of like an internal journey of
Ah,
realization.
okay.
Yeah, which is interesting. I know for example, my astrology chart is all, if you look at the top versus the bottom, and if you have more on the bottom, it's internal, and mine is all on the bottom, and I am also right angle cross. So that's interesting that they overlap like that. But and then there's also juxtaposition ones, which are a much smaller percentage, and their purpose is actually to connect right angle crosses with left angle crosses.
Oh wow. So
Yeah.
so yeah, my girlfriend is a right and I'm a left, and I've been helping her clear a lot of karma as
Interesting.
well. We've been upgrading all sorts of stuff, and it just, as above, so below. So it just
Mhm.
works on so many different scales with us. Do you have any questions?
I do have a question
Do you want
about
to
the
speak in the mic?
open centers. Mine or yours?
Here, and here.
I'm that's right. I'm on hook. Oh, then I gotta come up. Then I can't hear.
Oh, here you go.
Okay, so my question is, I have 3 open centers. I have the head, ajna, and spleen. So I'm
Okay.
not exactly sure what that means.
Yeah, I can go through all of the energy centers if you want, and explain like what it means to have them defined or to have them undefined.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So you mentioned the head. So the head, the energy of the head center, so that's going to be the top triangle facing up, is inspiration. It can also represent like anxiety or like mental pressure. So I have a defined head center. And you said you have a defined one or undefined?
Undefined.
Undefined.
Undefined,
Okay.
yeah.
So so having the undefined head center leaves you kind of like open to like getting a sense of what everybody else's thoughts. So you might feel like you're pretty good at like knowing what other people think, but it can also lead to doubt because you're kind of constantly bombarded by all this mental pressure. Yeah. And so it can lead to like self-doubt because you don't realize that it's other people's mental pressure, and you just constantly feel bombarded by I've heard clients describing this as like they're always worrying about what other people are thinking or things like that. So it's just this like constant like mental pressure. Does that sound accurate?
Oh yes, yes, very accurate.
So I have a client who struggles with this so much, and we're always working on like, just remember, like, you get to clear that out. It doesn't matter. Like, just focus in on you, right? And you're going to be sensitive to it. You're always going to be sensitive to it, but you get to like create that boundary for yourself of like, like in my work, I teach like, the soul truths of like who we are and, our divine essence and all of that stuff. So it's like reminding ourselves like none of that other doubt or judgment or fear or worry matters. Like, just come into your center. And actually, if you have a defined head center, then you're more prone to judgment versus the doubt so much. So I have the defined, and that's definitely been true for me my whole life, is like constantly working on releasing judgment around myself. So then the anja is the conceptualization. So I kind of think of like, we have our thoughts and then they start to conceptualize, they create ideas or beliefs and things like that. So same idea there. You're just very open and sensitive to other people's beliefs. So you have both of those open or undefined? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's also a really great way to be very intuitive, to be open to like your cosmic channels, like, channeling and things like that, because you're just open to new ideas. You're open to like lots of ways of thinking. I actually, again, I had them both defined, and I'm always kind of surprised by that because I feel like I've always been an open-minded kind of person, but I guess I have I'm very linear and like logical and like structured in my thinking. So I think that's how it plays out.
Hmm.
So yeah, just having that awareness again of being so sensitive to other people's thoughts and beliefs and really learning like, but what are my own? And it's okay for me to have my own, and I get to just follow my own, and I don't have to worry about what everybody else thinks. That's a big one.
Oh, I got a question for you that doesn't necessarily have to do with the two you were talking about, but I'm thinking now, is it easier for me to clear out my chakras because I'm completely open, that everything that I'm wearing isn't necessarily mine and I can just get it off of me?
I think it's not, okay, let me think about this for a second. So there's a process we go through with the undefined centers, right? So when we're younger, we don't know any different. We're just bombarded with all of the other energies and the programming, and it kind of gets all muddled in there, and it creates confusion, and it creates like probably pain and suffering in many different ways, however it plays out for us. But the thing about the undefined centers is that they're also like, once you because you have all of that, you have to work through it. I mean, you don't have to, but most of us hopefully will decide like, hey, I'd like to work through this and do my inner work. And through that work, you gain an incredible amount of wisdom. So through that process so it's not just having them undefined, but through your process of like doing your inner work, like, yes. And because you're a reflector, again, not so much because of the undefined, but because you're a reflector and your aura is just about sampling. Whereas projectors, again, they like take it on and like make it their own. So it's even harder for them to clear it. But you're that reflector that's just like, you're connecting to it and you're taking it in, but you're not like, I feel like projectors just like hold on to it a lot more. So I think that helps you too. Yeah.
Okay.
But I feel like go ahead.
Go ahead. What were you saying?
I was just gonna say it's probably more of a testament to the work that you've done to like realize what's mine and what's not mine.
Well, I feel that, so I mean, I've only been awake spiritually for just over 2 years now, and I
Me
feel
too.
like, oh, uh, I'm so honored to have someone else that I started my awakening at the same time as one of my other guests, and it was like the same month, like it
Oh, that's so
happened.
cool.
Yeah, so it's so awesome that you got it so quickly too. So you know what I mean then, that I go on and I listen to podcasts and I talk to other people on social media, and there's some people that have been awake 10, 20, 30 years, and they can't do the things that I do in meditation. And I think that it was easier for me in clearing off because to get to the center of me, that like I was so little of me that it was easy to take off all those coats I was wearing for so long, because I was completely filled with other things and other people.
Yeah. And I would just say too that like, in the fact that you just woke up like 2 years ago, like you said, caught on so fast. I feel like that also just speaks to probably, I don't know if this will make sense to you and your audience, but I talk about like the light we hold in our bodies. And I would imagine you just probably came in with a lot of light, and we know that people that have a lot of light can still go through a lot of experiences or pain or whatever's. But once you like start to remember, you remember pretty quick. You're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to derail you from what you were
That's
doing.
okay. So then the throat chakra, that one's again, like you were saying with your daughter, communication, manifestation, right? And action. So having that defined throat center, especially, like you really want to pay attention to what you're saying, because you're manifesting even more like very powerfully when you speak with the defined throat center. And if you have the undefined throat center, then you may find yourself sharing thoughts or opinions that you think are yours, but actually aren't really yours. So just like asking yourself, like, is this really mine? Is this really what I want to express? Is this really, what I feel is true and I want to speak as truth? Because they don't have that definition for themselves. So they'll kind of take in what other people are saying and they might repeat it until they kind of get.
So it's like something that they hear, and maybe it's something catchy, like on a meme, and they're like, and then they automatically repeat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting too, because I always heard about that and I was like, oh, people with undefined throats must be like, always, I don't know, like insecure about what they're saying or speaking, or not very good speakers, but that's not actually true. Because again, like my father has an undefined throat center and he's an incredibly good speaker, but I feel like they're absorbing that energy in that center. And I feel like his parents growing up, they were like good speakers and they valued that, like communicating and talking and being friendly and open and those kinds of things. So he absorbed that. Whereas somebody with undefined throat center that grows up in a family that doesn't communicate or, is lying or having secrets, like they'll absorb that energy and kind of take that on. And either way, they have to just work through it on their own until they can, like, as we grow up, we just kind of connect with our own central energetic system, through those experiences.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So then we have the G center, which is that diamond in the center again. And I know that the other one is called the heart, but this is actually the where love, self, and direction, that's and our identity, but that's all connected to the love. I just have kind of like my feeling around that is like who we truly are, like our soul self, like our true soul identity, like is love, like we're like made in the vibration of love, I believe. So I feel like that all makes sense. And again, I shared that that's the only center I have open. So as far as like connecting with other people's identities, like I do that very easily. People with the open identity centers often make good like intuitives or therapists or teachers. And those with the defined heart center, they're here to just like beam out love, which I feel like I do that too, but but anyways, but they're just like, maybe it's just more innate in them, like from the get-go, like they can just do it. Whereas I feel like I certainly had to learn to connect with that before I could do it for myself. Trying to think if there's anything else about having it defined. And just like a stronger sense of self, like who I am in the world. Whereas someone with the undefined might be like, oh, I'm not sure if I like that or if I like this, they might be a little more indecisive because they just don't really know who they are or what they want. But somebody with the defined is going to be a little bit more like, nope, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is how I feel, kind of energy.
Well, I'll say for me that so now I feel my heart center. I very strongly. I'll say like it highlights, like it just lights up, and I feel it. But when I was a kid growing up, not that I wasn't loved or anything, but I fell into a place where I didn't believe God was real because something I heard later on that made sense to me was someone said that usually people that don't receive fatherly love don't believe in God because they don't believe that a male could give you that type of love that's talked about. And that made sense for me. And it's not that my dad didn't love me, but I wasn't shown emotional care. And I felt that people that were very happy and were very loving, I felt that that was fake and that couldn't be real because I never felt anything like that in my life. And I'm like, oh, they're just lying. And now that I'm the opposite, I see that version of me and so many others, and they think that people like us who have been quote unquote reborn, into the spirit, that we are faking it and that we're just after money and stuff like that. And it's just like, man, I wish I could give you my experience to help you understand how I got here, but I know it's because they don't feel the love in their heart center the way that those who do express it so wonderfully.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's something, I don't think that it's like necessarily like your human design, whether you're born like having access to that or not, but it's just how did you experience the world, and how did we make everything, what did we make everything to mean? And most of those conclusions we come to them before we even can like are old enough to like understand them. We're just like kids, so however we have to work through those things, but at some point, and that's kind of that like change too of like with the undefined centers of like feeling the confusion, feeling the chaos, feeling all the other energy, not really knowing what it is. But at some point you decide like, but I can do something about this. Like, I'm not just a victim to all this energy, or, kind of like waking up and realizing, oh, I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I can actually create my reality with my energy and my intention. Right. So it really, I feel like, just takes that like acknowledgement of like, I get to decide. Like, I get to decide if I want to figure out what love really is or not, because I feel like even when I talk about it in my programs and stuff, even I feel like it doesn't even make sense. Like, I talk about self-love and soul love, and most people don't really know what that means. And sometimes I'm like, do I even know what it means? but because it goes so much deeper than just loving our human, or like our human design. Even it goes so much deeper, right? And the human design is I don't remember if I mentioned this in the beginning, but the point of human design, I think I did, is like deconditioning all of those human concepts, like your human concept of what fatherly love should look like, and even when you saw it in somebody else, it didn't compute, like it didn't make sense to you. So it's just deconditioning all of that programming that we have in our minds, and learning how to feel it within us ourselves, so that we don't have to convince ourselves of it. We can feel it, like you said, you can feel your heart now, like it.
Right. I think that what you're kind of getting at is that we are kind of shoved into one box of this is how it's supposed to be. And once you get into human design, you see, oh no, there's 5 different types of you. At least there's 5 different types of you.
There's 5 different types, and then a million ways when you get
Right.
into the gates and the channels and all the other energetic, and there's even stuff that you can't even access in a free chart. There's the hexagrams and the colors and the tones, and I don't even get into that, because I found that for most people, they just want to get a general sense of what's my type, what's my strategy, how do I move out in the world, and that alone can be just completely eye-opening and life-changing. But there's so much to it. It goes so deep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So I'll run through the rest of them real quick here. So then there's
Okay.
that heart I mentioned, the ego and the willpower. It's also called the will center. I get confused when I call it the heart too. But most, actually, I can't remember the percentage, but most people have undefined will centers or heart centers. And so you're going to have not a solid sense of worth in yourself, worth and self-esteem and willpower. So if you can't follow the diet, you can blame it on your undefined will center or whatever it is that you want to try to change. But those that have it defined will have more of a stable sense of willpower. I have a defined will center. I still don't follow the diet that I want to either, though. So, but I do, if I really put my mind to something, like I can stick with it. Like I have that, and some people just don't have that ability. But yet we're programmed to think, oh, if you just, do X, Y, Z and stick with it and make your checklists, or, schedule it out or whatever, that you should just be able to follow through. And some people really don't have the energetic support to do that.
Well, do you know of a way that someone with an undefined will center could get around that, powering through, just willing yourself into it?
The way that I just ran a program several times over where like the initial focus was losing weight, even though that's not even something that I generally teach, but it just happened to work out that the women that joined, they all wanted to lose weight. I personally, and this isn't really a human design thing, but I feel like everything that stands in the way from us following through with what we want is energy, some sort of energetic block or resistance. So to me, it's always about the healing and awakening journey. Heal yourself deeper, awaken more to who you are, and then you become more soul aligned, and whatever truly matters to you, you'll just have an easier way of following it or working through with it or sticking to it, because you don't have as much what I call the cloud of resistance, like that, the energy that's just hanging on, that's low vibrational, negative thought patterns, negative beliefs, traumas, or whatever that you haven't cleared yet, that just slow you down and get in your way of being able to just really zero in and follow through on what you want. Okay. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Total sense.
So then the solar plexus is a really interesting one, because this is our feeling center. So anyone that has an undefined solar plexus, they're going to be really sensitive to other people's emotions, and they might even take on other people's emotions. So sometimes they might be feeling angry, and they might think it's because of something in their own life, but really it's not even theirs. And they'll find things in their life to be like, oh, that must be what I'm upset about. But really they're actually just taking it on from somebody else around them. And then those with the defined solar plexus are actually like emanating out their emotional energy. So if you have a relationship where one's defined, one's undefined, it's really helpful to know that, to be like, oh, your emotions really impact me a lot because they're just kind of being directed right at me and I'm just taking them all in kind of thing. So that center to me is really interesting.
We relate.
I can't remember what other center did Mimi say that she had undefined?
Spleen.
Oh, the spleen. Okay, I'll do that one next. That one's about intuition, instincts, particularly when it comes to like life or death type instincts, and intuition, fears. There's one other thing. Oh, and the immune system. So the interesting thing about undefined spleens is that they're sensitive to absorbing other people's fears and insecurities. And so again, it's like they might have all these fears about things or worries or concerns or anxieties, but they might not be theirs. And if they're in a relationship with somebody that has a defined spleen and it's an unhealthy relationship, they might actually have a hard time leaving that relationship because on some level they just find comfort because the other person has that defined for them. So it gives them the sense of safety. So that's always something I ask any of my clients that are in unhealthy relationships but they feel like they can't leave. I'm like, let's get that other person's human design chart and take a look, because I have seen that happen. And once it was revealed, it was like, oh, that's it. Okay, I think I can walk away from this. So very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. So do you have undefined too? So you guys are
good. Yeah. Yes, we are A-okay.
And with the undefined spleen, Mimi, I don't know if you're good at or like you feel like you can pick up when other people are sick or ill, because that's something that people with the undefined spleen are often intuitive about.
Okay.
Yeah.
She said yes.
Okay.
Since I was a teenager, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so then back to the sacral center. That's our area of sexuality, rebirth, like life force energy, creativity. So having that defined, you just have like a secure sense of like putting things out into the world, creation, creating things, initiating things. It's not exactly the same kind of energy as the manifestors initiating energy. In fact, I have twins that are manifestors, and they have undefined spleen or sacral centers. And one thing about that undefined center is like those kind of people, like they don't know when enough is enough. And that's definitely my twins. Like they just don't know when enough is enough, and they can be very loud and very crazy, but then it'll like, they can't monitor or manage their energy either. So they'll just like go, 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 almost as if they're like a generator. But then at some point it'll catch up to them and they're like out. So
you said that's for undefined?
Yeah, for undefined. It's like they don't
make
have
sense
that,
for me.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like they don't have that like stable sense of like, okay, this is what I want to do and this is how much energy I have to give to it. It's just like, I'm all in. And then I'm done.
Yep, that is exactly as I was describing earlier. I go to the extreme with something and then I'm done with it.
Yep. Okay, sacral spleen. And then the last one is the root center. And that one is like pressure to get things done. And so that's another interesting one to look at couples, because if one has the defined and one has undefined, the person with the undefined root center will feel pressure from their partner's defined center to get things done. So this person doesn't even have to say like, hey, go take out the trash or help me out with this. Like they just feel pressure all the time to get things done. And they probably don't know where it comes from.
I know where it comes from.
But the person with the defined root center, they have like their own source of like, I'll get it done when I want to get it done. And they don't feel that the same amount of pressure to get it done. And also just kind of like a health tip for people with undefined root centers. Oftentimes that that energy, that like undefined energy, can burn out your adrenals. So it's a good thing for people with undefined root centers to support their adrenals, like with ashwagandha or some sort of like herbal supplement for adrenals.
Okay, I don't even know any of that. So,
So our adrenals get burned out when we're under a lot of stress and pressure. And so that constant like pressure to like get things done, even if it's felt kind of subtly for, most of your life or not, that can have that effect of like that like, it's like a low grade stress that you're always under of like, what do I need to do? Do I need to get something done? Do I need to finish this?
so just
Where
not
should I
being
be?
at peace.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So
And you
there
said
you
that
have it.
that's for defined root centers or
Or
undefined? Okay.
undefined, because they'll feel the pressure from everybody around them, especially everyone that has the defined centers. Because remember, the defined centers are kind of pushing that energy out,
Right.
and the undefined are taking it in.
Right. Now that makes total sense. Everything that you're saying is, I mean, it's right on point. Do you have something else? Okay. Yeah. I mean, this all is making so much sense. Like as I describe something to you, then 20 minutes later you tell me, oh yeah, this undefined center does this, and it's like,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. That, sometimes you think it's one part in your chart, but then you hear somebody explain another part and you're like, oh wait, maybe it's that part of my chart. Like
right.
sometimes the themes overlap a little bit, but they play out a little bit differently. The other interesting thing to look at if you want to look at for couples is looking at your channels, and just not, I mean, you can look at which gates you have and all that, but that can get really complicated really fast. But just looking at how many you have overlapping, because having them, so if you have, I don't want to make this too complicated, but like, if you have like a full channel, those lines that connect the different parts of the chart, and they're the same in each chart, then that makes it very compatible energy. That's going to make you get along. Again, they have to be the same. So if it's like some of those are like the little lines and they're only halfway and they don't fully connect, then it's just called a gate. It has to fully connect. The line has to go all the way through the channel to be a channel. But if you have one side of that line and then the other side is empty, and it doesn't matter what color it is either. And then Mimi has the other side, and the side that you have colored in is empty on hers. That's called like an electromagnetic match. And that creates like this really powerful like connection of like, oh, you connect my channel. Like I didn't have that piece before I was with you. And now I have that connection.
Oh, wow.
Because the channels and the gates are all about like an energetic flow. And so if you ever do look into the gates, again, they can get really complicated, but it's just understanding that we do have all of them. So if you don't have it highlighted in your chart, doesn't mean you don't have it at all, but the ones that are highlighted, we're going to either just feel them a little bit more, or it's going to be a more like definitive part of our life experience. And we also might feel the absence of some of the ones that we don't have. So it really takes time to kind of like look through it all and really contemplate, like, how does this play out for me? How does this feel for me? But I just love kind of like looking at people's charts to see like how many of their channels match up, or how many of those like special connections that they have with it, especially within couples.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up, because that's very interesting. Because I'm wondering like, what are the gates and the lines? Like, how can I use this? And like you said, it's a lot. I don't even know astrology very much in order to know what the symbols even are. So I have to look up what the symbol means, and
Yeah,
it can be a lot.
it does. It gets really complicated, and so that's I took a course on it last year, and every time I like start to like learn new aspects of it, I'm like, that's it. I'm all in. I'm going to learn everything. And then I get so far in and I'm like, this is just too much. Like I can't, and again, like I said, I find that people really just appreciate more of the general picture anyway. How do I need to kind of move around in the world to best utilize my energy? And that's actually something we didn't really touch on. I don't know if you want to talk about like the
Yeah, go
strategy
ahead.
for each types. Yeah. So with the manifestors, their strategy is, again, because they have that kind of repelling aura and they're here to initiate ideas, but because they can be so like, kind of like just this forceful energy, they can kind of offend people sometimes. So their strategy, which just means the best way for them to move about in the world so that they can get their gifts across, is to inform, just to inform people. And they're not going to want to do that because they're going to feel like people are going to say, well, no, or get in their way. But if they inform people, hey, this is my idea and this is what I'm going to do, energetically, it opens the door for them to continue moving forward without pissing people off around them, essentially, and making people feel like they're like left behind or left out or something like that. So that's just an incredibly important strategy for manifestors. And it's funny because my twins are manifestors and they must just intuitively know this because they ask me if they can do stuff all the time. And a part of me is like, why are you even asking this? Of course you can like go take a shower. Like, I don't care if you don't go take a shower, but they do. And I'm just like, I wonder if they just like intuitively know that they're received better when they, you know, in children, it comes across as asking permission. And then as we get into adulthood, it's more of like just informing people. But yeah.
Okay. Very interesting.
So then the projectors, they're, I really feel for the projectors. I have my two boys are both projectors. So we have two manifestors and two projectors. And my husband and I always joke that, you know, because the manifesting generators and the generators, their strategies are to respond. So we're like, yeah, none of our kids respond to us at all. Like they were not designed to, and that it just explains a lot. But projectors have to actually wait to be invited. That's their strategy. And that's really hard. But it's incredibly important because they're so powerful, they're so potent, they have so much wisdom that if they just go into a room and try to start sharing it all, like this is what I see, and this is what you're good at, and this is how this should go, and this is what we should do, they're not going to be received very well. They have to wait for somebody to say, hey, what do you think about this? And then they can express, you know, all of their ideas and all of their wisdom that they have to share. So it's like incredibly hard, but they, their energy is, and there's another, it's focused and absorbing. So they do actually kind of absorb energy. So if they can be patient and wait, people will notice them and people will be drawn to them and drawn to asking them for their input, for their energetic, you know, signature.
So can it seem like they're maybe that they have good advice and they know they have good advice, but if they give their advice, people don't want to hear it unless they ask for it?
Exactly. And it can go south really fast. I think of my oldest son. Again, both my sons are projectors, but my younger one I feel like he just kind of intuitively gets his energetic signature and knows how to use it. But my oldest, he wants to be a manifester so bad. And he had a lot of challenges in middle school, like with friends and stuff, because I think he was just trying to like put his ideas out and nobody wanted to hear it. And there's the not self themes of each type too, which generally happens if you're not living by your design and your type. Manifestors is anger and projectors is bitterness. And he definitely carries an energy of bitterness to this day. He just turned 15. So I'm still hoping he'll be able to work that out. But definitely from those experiences of not being seen, like they really, and if you have a projector child, it's incredibly powerful and important to just recognize them, like recognize their ideas, recognize their efforts, and also to help facilitate invitations for them. You know, not trying to be like a helicopter parent or anything like that, but just, you know, trying to facilitate these experiences where they can feel like they were invited, so they can open up freely. Okay, so the generators, their strategy, like I mentioned, is to respond. And this has to do, this is like kind of twofold. They're responding to their environment, but they're also responding to their sacral center. So all generators have defined sacral centers. And that center, when something comes their way, they need to make a decision, they need to, you know, decide to act or to not act, to say yes or to no. Their sacral center will tell them with like, it'll like they actually typically have this like internal gut knowing, or like or like noise vibration within their body that will tell them like, and if it's a yes and they say yes, then they will have the sustainable energy to do the project. If it's a no and they say yes, they're going to get burnt out, they're going to be unhappy, they're going to be miserable, right? So it's really important. Generators are the ones that are here, like I said, to at least at this time, to carry out the projects, to do the work. They like to go, go, go. They're always in action, usually, because they have a ton of energy. They have sustainable energy. But if they are saying yes to things they don't really want to do, that energy will peter out. And it's actually not healthy for their bodies as well. So listening to that gut, the internal gut, like yes or no, is really important for them. So they're responding to their environment, but then they're also responding to their sacral center. And it's not just, and I feel like a lot of generators get stuck on this because they're like, wait, I'm supposed to wait and respond to something, like, but the wait part doesn't have to be in there. It's just responding. So it's like, you can respond to anything. I'm a manifesting generator. So I feel like my generator aspect, it's like responding to like inspiration. Like I just need one person in my audience to say one little thing, and all of a sudden I have a new program idea or something like that. It's like, but if I just try to think of stuff out of nowhere, I got nothing. I need some kind of like inspiration to like get my motor running so that I can like have a place to go with that energy.
Like you need tracks. Like you're a train and you can't go if you don't have any tracks.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And if they're trying to generate their own tracks, then it doesn't go very well.
Right. Yeah. It's like that. Yeah. It just needs like a little spark, and then the direction you're going, but if you don't have the spark, you don't know which way you're supposed to go.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Go ahead. This is so wonderful. You can, I'm getting so much out of this.
Good. I'm glad. and they like say something if I'm talking too fast. I tend to talk.
You're doing great.
Just go. It's a generator in me. But so the manifesting generators, their strategy is going to be a little bit of both, right? Like they actually, it's important for them. A specific piece of their design is visualization, because yes, they're manifestors. So they do want to have that informing aspect, but they need to visualize their ideas first, visualize them, and then allow them to, like, it's kind of like manifestation, right? It's like you visualize it, and then a little piece will come into your environment, and then you get to respond to it. So I feel like that's exactly what I do. When I want something, I do this way better now than I used to, but I just put it out. I put it out to the universe, and I say, or to my guides, or to God, or to whatever it is you want to call it. But it's like, hey, this is what I want. And I've learned how to do it in a way where I feel completely in alignment with what I'm asking, which I think is the hard part for, most of us that might be trying to manifest. That again, we have like some sort of like programming or traumas or energy that might be in the way of creating that. But just being super solid and being like, this is what I'm looking for. And then I just wait. And I'm really good at waiting. I don't know why. I am so good at waiting. I'm like, okay, I have set my intention. I am good to go. Something great is going to come my way. And then I just wait. And then I've gotten better and better over the years at really knowing when it's the right thing that comes my way. So it's visualizing and then responding. And then if there is an aspect of informing that will help you to create that kind of energetic pathway, make sure you do that as well. Yeah, so that's the manifesting generator. And then I think we only have the reflector, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You could probably teach me more about this because to me, the reflector's strategy is like mind-boggling, but it's waiting the 28-day lunar cycle.
It's impossible.
Like, how do you wait 28 days every time you have to make a decision?
Well, I will say that I don't think that I have to wait 28 days to make every single decision, but that I have used it. And the way that I went about first creating this podcast and then creating the next step of what I'm going to do, publicly, as far as trying to get into the public eye more. So what I did, I waited. I had outlined like a bunch of episodes, and I waited about 3 months, and then I finally got it going. And then, and I didn't even know human design at that time. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of worked out for me. So when I heard of human design, they're like, wait a lunar cycle. I'm like, what's that even mean? Like, what do you mean I have to wait a month? So then I made a Patreon account, and I waited and waited and waited. And then it was a month later, I was like, I'm going to delete it. And I actually intended to start out the night. My girlfriend went out, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go upload a bunch of videos on there. And I deleted it because it didn't feel right. And I was like,
Yeah.
had I, I could have put a lot of time towards it, but instead what came was now I have a website, which is more than just what I was going to do with that. Because with that, it felt rushed and it didn't feel right. And I see the benefit in waiting in that when I was growing up, often I would jump to conclusions of what possibilities could be, and I'd arrive there already mentally. And
Mhm.
other people that I'm interacting with, I didn't realize not everyone had that. So when I'm seeing possibilities, if you meet someone and sparks start flying, all of a sudden, I'm arriving at conclusions, like I'm living out what's happened without even attempting it. I'm just feeling their energy, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna. And I realized that I would jump the gun a lot, and it was uh, waiting and seeing how I was being treated was very difficult, because it's like, oh, I will treat anybody however, if I'm feeling uh, a little bit of love from someone, I'm going to give you back a lot of love. And for some people, it's too much for them.
Mhm.
And for other people uh, that aren't giving you love, they expect to just me give it, and it's like there's nothing there. So for me, learning this, I mean, now I am in a relationship, but learning that really helped me understand why I was doing the things I was doing as a kid, teenager, young adult, why like I'm coming to these conclusions, and not just with relationships, but also with my job. It's always the best job, and it's so amazing. And then I find out like a month later, I'm like, yeah, this isn't all that great actually. But I
Mhm.
feel the
Mhm.
initial burst of energy, and I get so excited with things, and
Yeah.
then I'll either burn out, or then it won't take, and I would have been served better had I waited.
And that makes sense too, because I would assume in the beginning, when you first get that job or that idea, you're probably being influenced by all of the energies around you. So it
Yeah.
probably takes that lunar cycle, right, to kind of filter through all the other energies to really identify, well, how do I really feel about it? And
Yeah.
you mentioned what feels good, and that's actually your the authority is like how we make decisions, and reflectors have no authority because they have none of the definition, so they just have to do what feels good. Like that's
Right.
actually how you make decisions, but it apparently takes you 28 days sometimes, or maybe with the bigger life decisions to really know what feels good.
Well, I've actually cut that by incorporating Jesus as my external authority, because I have no inner authority. And I had done this back in January. I had hurt myself, and it just happened in a way that I came to understand Jesus in a much different way. I started having a personal relationship with Jesus, and it was like,
Mhm.
okay, once I heard about human design and heard that I have no inner authority, I'm like, oh, well, the last few months have been going better as I've been giving my authority over to Jesus, which means that I'm just, when I go to make a decision, I try to be more Christ-like. I try to be more loving. I try to be more understanding, more compassionate, less judgmental. And when I'm doing those things, it's making my decision making easier. It's because I'm reacting in a better way, and I'm doing things in a more sufficient way. So that's probably why I don't have to wait 28 days for every decision. But
Mhm.
but then, I still, when it's something that gets me excited, it's very hard to hold back from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I couldn't do that.
Well, I didn't have the patience. So when you say you have lots of patience, with me, I had to learn patience, and it's still a learning process. But I
I
couldn't
think
be waiting.
I have patience in some places and not in others. I think I should preface, because like I feel like when it comes to areas where maybe like I don't feel super confident in, I'll be like, that's okay, I'll just wait. Like that's easier for me than maybe like taking like a step into something that I'm not sure, or like that makes me nervous. So I think that's why I like to wait. I don't think it's a necessarily a good thing.
Okay, I could see that. I have that with me as well. If if I'm not confident in it, I got to stand back and watch somebody do it. And as soon as I
Mhm.
see them do it, I'm like, okay, now I can do it. And once I get a little bit of practice in, it's like, oh, it's like I've known it my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about your awakening? Since it's only been a couple years, do you want to go over
Sure.
your stuff? So how did your awakening come about?
So it was actually the same girl that I was working with the human design chart. She was like, what was she doing? I think she was just doing like intuitive coaching at the time. And we had gone to, so I used to be a health and wellness coach, and then I was a life coach, and now I do like intuitive soul healing sessions and things like that. But she was really the one that we had gone to the same health and wellness program together. So she was on my Facebook feed, and she was talking all about like spirituality and intuition and all of this stuff that I have my whole life just been so interested in and obsessed with. But I'm not that. Like, I'm not intuitive, I'm not psychic, I'm not any of those things, like, but it's so cool. But she was just talking in a way that was like, it really helped me feel like if I worked with her, then I would be able to like more intuitively connect with my clients and help people more. And so she did my human design chart reading, and really, like, I can't even explain it. It was just being in her energy. I mean, I guess it makes sense probably to your audience, like with codes and awakening, it was just like it activated me. And I just like was like, I got off that call and I was like, I don't know what just happened. I'm not even sure about half of the stuff we talked about, but I feel like that was the most real conversation I've ever had, even though it was like out of this world. So I started working
Wow.
with her, and actually in our human designs we have a lot of connecting gates, so that would make sense that she's very activating for me. So I worked with her for quite a while, like a year and a half, and then just through doing my own, what like I call it, the healing and the awakening journey. So just healing more and more layers of who I've always been and who I'm not, and like awakening to who we are. I've finally accepted that I do channel information. And so I've been told that I'm exceptionally good at channeling for the collective. And I've been doing that like in my groups. I just go in and I just start talking and I just think, oh, that was a pretty good one. But I didn't ever really like acknowledge where it was coming from. And so now my work is to like help people on that healing and awakening, because for me, it was like, every time I healed another layer of myself, I remembered more of like who I am as a soul being, why I'm here, what's going on at this time, why we're all here. You know, it's just like layer after layer. And so I'm just still going,
Wow.
still awakening, I feel like.
No, that's a beautiful story. So you've been a life coach and a health and wellness coach. So for how long have you been dabbling with that stuff? Or not dabbling, but
Um,
into it?
been 5 or 6 years now. I did the health and wellness for probably like a year and a half. And even when I was doing health and wellness, I was doing it in a way where it was always about releasing energy. It was always like, you want to lose weight, but there's a deeper reason, and it's an energetic reason. Like, I've always been very good at like understanding energy, and Abraham Hicks and law of attraction, like all of that. I was like, oh, there's definitely something to that, and it just like all of that kind of stuff clicked. And then I switched to life coaching, and then it was about, let me see if I get my timeline right. Yeah, it was last year, maybe like a year and a half ago, that I started like publicly saying like, you know, more of a spiritual coach and like spiritual and conscious awakening kind of stuff. And like I took a tentative step in that direction of like coming out more in that vicinity, but it's always been what my work has been around. And I think that the things that I'm drawn to in the work that I do, again, like the more that I awaken to like my purpose for being here, it's always followed that path. It's like now I'm here to like help people like really awaken, you know, because there's so much going on right now. And it's like, oh, there was a reason that, you know, I was drawn to these kinds of modalities or these kinds of teachings or these kinds of ways of explaining things, because it all really made sense into where I'm going and the people that, you know, I just see so many people that are just either awake but still like weighed down by the energy, or not awake and don't know that there's another way to be. So just really wanting to help shift that more and more.
Well, that's so amazing. And you, other than the channeling, do you have other abilities that you've developed?
Not really. Let me think about that, because people are always telling me that I can do more than I say that I can. I'm very, it's not, I don't think of it as like what I would call like multidimensional experiences so much, but I'm just very, very intuitive. So it's like when I can talk to people and with the right, like holding the right kind of space and being in the right kind of energy, like I can really zero in on their energetic block. So I feel like there's something to that's beyond just like my human perception. Maybe that's maybe that's channeling too, or just channeling their guides. You know, when I do sessions with people, information will come through, or I do Reiki with people and information will come through. So
you do Reiki as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was, I've heard of Reiki, but I'd never had it done to myself. And I had, again, my mentor that I worked with, that was part of my spiritual awakening. She was talking about Reiki and she taught Reiki. And I was like, I need to learn that. I need to do that. She's like, you've never even had it done. I was like, no, I need to do that. and I flew to Indiana and I got attuned and I started doing it. And I had people right away saying like, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Like they could just feel it. But I had no idea what I was doing, but I just knew. It was like, I was just following my heart. I was like, nope, something's telling me I'm supposed to do this. I'm just going to go do it. So I incorporate Reiki into all of my sessions because I feel like it's energy healing. Like, why wouldn't you? It just helps to support whatever you're working on.
Yeah, I feel like you've probably your whole life you've been doing just what you're supposed to do and not even know that you're doing. I get that energy off of you that you're only think that you've been awake for 2 years because you've only been paying attention to it for but
you're probably right.
You've been very energetically connected. I can feel your energy and it feels very put together in different layers, and that like different large puzzle pieces were put together in place in different times, and that you've just been building off of it, and you haven't really had to have yourself broken down in order to build it back up the way some of us do, that you always kind of just had these building blocks that you just kept on having a good infrastructure, basically.
I think so, for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so I mean, you told me you'd never been on a podcast before. You're a life coach, a health and wellness coach, you're a human design chart reader, you're Reiki. What level Reiki are you?
I'm master teacher.
Okay, master Reiki. And no one's invited you on your podcast. And I mean, this was an amazing episode. I feel like I learned so much more about human design talking to you than I had listening to all the different podcasts I listened to before. Maybe it's because I got a hands-on experience. I got to ask some questions that I had, but I feel like a lot of people don't get into the. I don't want to generalize anything, but the way that you got into the undefined versus defined centers, it really, I think, is going to help the listeners when they listen to this.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. I love going into that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Thank you for all the kind words you've you said. That means a lot. I was nervous. I actually just started my own podcast in May. So I
Oh,
have
yeah?
like 8 or 9 episodes. So I have been doing podcasts and I do live videos in my group, but this was the first time that I've been on somebody else's podcast. So I was a little bit nervous, but I again, like your energy was so calm and relaxing. As soon as I came in, I was like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm not even getting like the nervous, like fast breathing chest thing. Like, I'm good.
Yeah, I kind of take that away from people because I'm very intuitive and I can feel your energies. So, and being undefined everywhere, I know it's not mine. So I just take a deep breath and I can calm you down, or whoever I'm
Mhm.
around, I can calm them down by just calming myself. And then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, and then that's why people always tell me I'm easy to talk to because I calm them down without them even knowing it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing.
It is. And, I wouldn't know about myself the way that I do if it wasn't for human design, even though that's something that I haven't delved into as much as you have or many others have. I just understood it right away and it helped me know myself. The whole point of this is to know thyself, really. And that more than any other information that I've got through different things, the one thing I can say that really boosted me was learning that I'm a reflector and learning what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And everything that I've come across on my chart, I mean, it lines up exactly with how I am and who I am and how things work for me and how they don't work for me. And it's lines up so well.
Yeah.
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 So I'm sure you're doing fantastic work, and I gotta check out your podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Called Healing Hearts and Awakening Souls.
Healing Hearts and Awakening Souls. I'm gonna have to give that a listen. See, I've only had my podcast since April, so
Oh, we almost started our podcast together at the same time too.
yeah, there you go. It's just the energies that I feel that
Yeah.
a lot of my guests, we have so much in common, and this is the first time we've ever spoken. We spoke several times on Facebook, but first face to face, well, not even face to face, but video meeting, talking to each other, and just so many different things have clicked, and it's just so amazing the way the world's working right now.
It really is. It's exciting. I like to look at it as exciting. I know it can get scary sometimes, but we're
Yeah.
heading in a beautiful direction, I think. So just keep an eye on the prize kind of thing.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. We don't gotta dwell on the negative things that are happening in our lives, but it is when at the end of the day, every night when I go to sleep, I'm like, today's a win.
Yeah.
No matter what that big monster of war is looming, and it's knocking at our door, and everybody can feel it, even though none of us want it. But we know that the powers that want to be, they are trying to force it into us. And every night when I wake up and everything was okay, I wake up in the morning and I don't have a news alert that there was a bombing. I'm like, okay, it's another day, and I feel very blessed, even though everything's so crazy. I feel very blessed in that I can see through the bullshit, because maybe if we all weren't awake as we are now, that we would have went to war, and it would have been World War III, because there would have been no one to recognize, like, oh, stop playing their game. There wouldn't have been enough of us. We would have been playing their game to,
Yeah.
like, well, what was it, Bush versus Kerry? Like, remember how crazy it was then? Like, imagine that with Trump versus Biden. Like, oh my God, it would have been so much worse if people were that asleep still. 9/11 could not happen today, in the way that it did 20 years ago. So I'm
That's
just
another
so
podcast
blessed.
for another day, right?
Yes, it is. Actually, I'm having a guy on tomorrow. He wrote a book called God, School, 9/11, and JFK. So
Oh boy.
yeah, I can't wait. Do you have any more questions, Mimi?
I wanted to ask more about the chart changing that you were talking about, 2027.
Oh.
It
Oh,
makes
right.
sense to me because the manifestor is known as the like natural slave because they just kind of most are asleep, so they just kind of do what they need to do and
Do you mean the generators, the ones that are like doing all the work?
well, yes, the generators, that's what I mean. Yes. So I want to know how that changes for 2027.
Yeah.
if-
So with like the consciousness raising on the planet, like they're going to start to
Right.
first of all recognize
Yeah.
that they get to decide. They get to decide what they want to do, and that when they do the work that they want to do, it's way more fulfilling, and that they actually have that choice. Like they should have that choice. But like you said, a lot of them are asleep. I don't know if it's like specific to generators, but that's just the highest percentage of what's on the in the population
Right.
anyway. But like you said, like they just don't even think about it. They're like, no, I'm supposed to work a 9 to 5 job. I'm supposed to, do this or make this much money or however, whatever their belief system is. So really again, as the vibration continues to rise, it's like, oh, wait, I get to decide. This doesn't make me happy. So that shifts just in that, the mentality. But my understanding is that so there is something about the chart changing, and I don't want to misquote because I'm not like a professional in that, but there's an aspect of I want to say it's like it has to do with like if you're familiar with like unity consciousness and something about like the solar plexus like merging maybe with another center or something along those lines. But the idea is that because we'll be more like telepathic and unified, so it'll just be like innate. Does that make sense? So it won't be like a separate center.
Mm-hmm.
And don't quote me on that because I'm not a professional on that, but I watched like one webinar on it and it was a while ago, and that's what I think I remember from it. But then also that there's going to be more and more of the projectors coming in because we're moving into more of like creating energetically and like organizing and managing and creating and like flowing all cohesively together. So it won't be so much of like the workforce that we need to get things done. Does that make sense?
Do you know where that information came from? Was that from the original channeler?
I honestly don't know. That's a really good question though.
Okay. But I've
'cause
gotten a lot of information about 2027 and 2028 right in that time frame of being the big change of when everything occurs. So that's just interesting to hear.
Which
that.
part of me is like, but how can they predict that? Because timelines are changing all the time. But what do I know?
Yeah. Who knows what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, I don't have more information on that. I should have known that would be like a piece that was important in this kind of a podcast and looked into that, but I didn't think to.
Hey, well, it leaves all us and the listeners to go find some information. Because the best way to find out the information is to do the research, put in the work, and it's so much more satisfying.
Right.
Do you want to let the listeners know where they can find you?
Sure. So I have the podcast Healing Hearts and Awakening Souls, and I also have a Facebook page called Healing Hearts and Awakening Souls. So you can be happy to find me there. And I pop in there live and try to post stuff. I like to post about the astrology and how the themes that are showing up and how they're affecting me. You asked me about like my spiritual gifts, and I do feel like there's something about like me being human and the process that I go through. There's something about like sharing my process that I feel like is supposed to help people. I've been told that by like, intuitives or psychics that say that I'm here to like, I'm a teacher, but I'm also here to experience it with my clients. And that's how I do all my programs. I'm always like right in it with them. But that's how I feel like I share my wisdom is like, I experience it and I share my experience. So I love to share like the astrology energies, but then like how it's playing out or how you might see it or how it might show up. And I do live videos and stuff trying to support people on their healing and awakening journey. Cause to me, it's the most important thing in the world, but that's just me.
I think it's just everybody who's on the awakening path.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It's like
I
we
say
can't
that
get
because I'm
enough.
like surrounded by like my third dimensional family and friends that are like, we don't care.
Right, yeah. But then, maybe you're bringing them along. You're doing so much work that you're just carrying the whole bag on your shoulder for them, You're playing Santa Claus and they don't even know it.
Maybe.
I will definitely have to join your Facebook group as well. I didn't know. Yeah, Mimi said she's doing it right now.
Perfect.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And hey, well, if you ever need to come back on for anything, or want to come back on, not that you need to, but if you ever want to come back on for anything, you're more than welcome to. This was such an amazing conversation, and I'm so glad we got to do this. And I'm so thankful that you were willing to come on when I asked you to. That's so awesome.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. It was like the highlight of, I don't even know, to be asked to be on a podcast. I was like, I got asked to be on a podcast. So that was great. And I really enjoyed being here and talking to you guys. This has been like so much fun. It's like, why don't I do this more often?
Yeah, it is great. And if any podcasters out there listening, hey, I mean, you heard Kara yourself, sounds impressive to me. If I'm someone that wants to know, I mean, obviously I was someone who wanted and still does want to know, and I invited her on, but now you get to hear her say all these things. I'm sure people will be knocking down your door in no time.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. It was really awesome to get to connect with you too.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kara.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mimi.
It
was great to meet you.
You too.
All right, everybody, we are going to stop the recording now. We will talk to you later. Bye.